Okay, we are a little bit behind, but you know what? It is Friday, and I'm on the Friday vibe, so we're just gonna wing it, okay? We're gonna have Stacey, Coleman, and Ernest House Jr. next, if I can have you both come up, please. And we'll start with brief introductions from Ernest and Stacey, and then we'll switch over and get ready for their presentation.
Thank you, Val.
You're very welcome.
Mike, Duvan the Boyak, that means hello, my friends in Ute. My name is Ernest House Jr. First and foremost, I'm a member of the Ute Mountain Ute tribe. And I've lived in Denver, probably part-time. I say I have 1 foot, like many of you, 1 foot here, 1 foot on the res, and my res is 8 hours away, so it's a long stretch, but I've lived in the Denver area for about 20 years now. One of the biggest questions I get is, what do I do? And a lot of what I do now is I work for the Keystone Policy Center. We're headquartered up in Keystone, Colorado. We're not associated with the Keystone Pipeline. Just want to make sure to clear that air right now. It's usually my first joke about Keystone. But we have an office in Denver. We have an office in DC. Several years ago, I launched the Center for Tribal and Indigenous Engagement at the Keystone Policy Center. And Keystone Policy Center is actually it started a lot of its work in 76 with tribal nations. Who's here heard of CERT, Council of Energy Resource Tribes? It started under the umbrella of the Keystone Policy Center back in 78. And it's great to see that the work and the advocate today still on tribal engagement. And so I work with communities across Colorado now. I have projects in Steamboat, in the San Luis Valley around buffalo restoration, which is awesome because I've been talking to Scott about buffalo in Boulder County and Karen and others. I also work with communities like Grand Junction, Durango, Cortez, Vail, across the board. And it's all around tribal indigenous issues. And so what we want to share with you today is a project that was just launched in April of this year, called the Colorado Outdoor Strategy. We're going to explain what it is. We go out to different communities. I and either a colleague of mine or Stacey or somebody else go out to communities across Colorado, and we talk about the importance of resiliency planning due to climate change. This report that came out, you can read it, it's a huge document. Basically, we're going to condense it all, but the whole effort is that we have big climate impacts in Colorado. We know that. That's just an understanding. How do communities work to lessen those impacts is what our plan is moving forward. We want to encourage communities across Colorado to work with tribal nations that were historic to that area, to help them battle their climate impacts and their climate resiliency planning. We want them to encourage that. What does that mean? We know that, okay, yeah, we just go out and ask for City of Cortez to, which is where I was born and raised, to go ahead and work with the Ute Mountain Ute tribe or Navajo Nation. They may not want to do that. The areas around Colorado are broken up into regions. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But Great Outdoors Colorado came right out of the gate and said, we believe in what Colorado's doing, first time in the state's history, by the way. We believe in this so much that we're going to put $50 million behind it. And what we mean by that is also including tribes that are eligible to work with communities across Colorado to work on this. That's funding that can go to tribal communities, that can go to programs that you may be working on right now. And so that's what we're here today to talk about. I'm not going to talk about how to work with tribes because I know the audience I'm talking to right now. And you can tell me how that has happened. But this work, I got to tell you, is so important, and it's just a first step. We know, and I was great to hear the previous panel as a former Denver American Indian Commissioner many moons ago, before I had gray hair, I understand the struggle, and a lot of times I understand sometimes we're our own worst enemy in our community. But I want to make sure, this is one step to get us 10 more steps down the road. And so I just wanted to thank you for your time and allowing us the opportunity to share this information in front of you today. Sorry for the long intro, but to my colleague and co-presenter.
Wonderful, thank you, Ernest. Oh, no, that's okay. And I'm Stacey Coleman. I'm the Assistant Director for Tribal Affairs for the Colorado Department of Natural Resources. This is a new position. The Department of Natural Resources has never had any sort of focus specifically with a position on tribal affairs, working with tribal governments, working with the greater Native American community throughout Colorado. And so it's really fresh and new. But with this, with not only this particular strategy, but with everything that we're trying to do here in the Department of Natural Resources to actually build out a tribal relations program, to bring on more tribal liaisons to help with each of our divisions, and ensuring that we're having community engagement that's authentic, that's meaningful, that's robust, and that's often, so that we can ensure transparency, to ensure that we're building out proper consultation procedures with tribal governments, not only that reside in the state geographically, but also reside outside of the states and that have historical ties. So this is still being built. So as I say that, there's going to be a lot of growing pains. And I hope, though, that through those growing pains, we're doing it with all of you, with greater community, and with all of the tribal governments and us coming together. So this strategy itself is intended to hopefully start that piece. We can talk a little bit more about that here. So just walking through today, I think this presentation that we're really going to show you, and Ernest, you can correct me if I'm wrong on what we talked about here, but is really just to give you an idea of what we're showing to other communities as we're talking to them about the Colorado Outdoor Strategy. It's really so that folks can become familiarized with this particular strategy. It's a statewide strategy that was developed over the course of 2 years, and also so that folks really have, a better understanding of a really important guidance framework that was developed alongside of this. So for those that may not be familiar with this initiative, it's really a collaborative effort that focuses on bringing together 3 main planning component pieces that you see here. It's conservation, outdoor recreation, and climate resiliency planning. And it's focusing on this greater question of how we can come together in Colorado in a good way. We know that when we take care of the land takes care of us. And with that in mind, the larger overarching sort of goal of this entire strategy is a sustainable future, to ensure that our natural and cultural resources are protected, well-managed, co-stewarded together, and accessible, while also supporting all of the communities that rely on them and for future generations to come. So actually, if we can go back to the 5 pillars there. I wanted to just focus 1 second on these 5 pillars of the strategy there, which shows sort of what we're hoping to do with this, really to advance cooperation, strengthen partnerships, align planning, provide tools and resources, and support and amplify regionally rooted efforts, especially those from community. Even just the strategy development alone, I think, encompassed these 5 pillars in the sense that it was a diverse group of coordinating and key partners that came together, both from the public and private sector, including tribal, federal, state, and local governments, local communities, land managers, water rights owners, and other non-governmental organizations that were and continue to be dedicated to this effort and seeing it advance. A steering committee and a technical committee were also created to assist with the development of this particular strategy, and they provided invaluable insight and expertise there. And there were also 60 stakeholder meetings that were held on this particular strategy development. Colorado Parks and Wildlife is the lead agency coordinating implementation here, but that's not without additional support from coordinating partners that include the Colorado Department of Natural Resources, Great Outdoors Colorado, who we've got here too, Colorado Outdoor Recreation Industry Office, and the Governor's Office. Keystone Policy Center, who Ernest is with, was also an incredible partner assisting with the development and is also assisting with the implementation of this strategy. They've been an incredible consultant for us to work with and really assisted in leading the guidance framework for tribal collaboration. So, There we go. Now we'll go back to this one. I handed out a sticker there for everybody with a QR code on it to hopefully make it easy to be able to just access the website for the Colorado Outdoor Strategy there. And but really what we're seeing here on this particular slide is just sort of the three interrelated, what we call like North Star goals for this particular strategy. So going through each of these briefly, when we think about climate resilient conservation and restoration, this is really about how to protect the lands and waters in the state for our future. We know the importance of biodiversity and habitat connectivity rely on conservation and restoration too. Exceptional and sustainable outdoor recreation. Colorado is known for outdoor recreation, and it's a key piece of this goal is really considering how do we make recreation, however personally you think of recreation, accessible and equitable to everyone. So it's not just going to be thinking about, recreating in the sense of something that requires equipment, skiing, biking, but also in the sense of being in relation with nature, praying, and taking time to connect in other forms. As we think about working on recreation together, how do we do that in a respectful and reciprocal manner? So that's something where this goal is going to tie into that conversation there. The third is coordinated planning and funding. That it's really around organization and collaboration together to ensure that there's supportive funding. Ernest mentioned the $50 million there, grant that we'll talk about a little bit more too at the end of our presentation. Oh, yep, right there. So one other piece of this, and there's really not information on here, so I'll just talk about it, is when you go to that main website, there's also a resource hub that has a lot of different resource and tools there for folks to utilize when considering this strategy in their planning efforts. For instance, there's a centralized data dashboard, which includes state and county level data, summarizing several key indicators for conservation and recreation. There's a plan library, which is a searchable database of over 500 different plans developed by government entities on relevant topics. And I mean, I don't know about you, but it's really frustrating when you go somewhere and there's a plan, and then there's another plan, and then you've got to go over here and there's another plan. So this is an effort to try to get all the plans in one place. So at least, even though there's over 500, we've got them all in one place for you to find. There's also EDI Resource and Action Guide, which is another searchable database. It's really providing resources for entities doing conservation and recreation work there. And then, of course, the one we're going to just talk to you a little bit more about today, which is the guidance framework for tribal collaboration. So I'll pause there and hand it back to you, Ernest.
Perfect. Thanks, Stacey. So Stacey just gave you the high-level overview of the outdoor strategy plan for the state. When we were first talking about this plan with state agencies, the first thing that pops into my mind, I'm sure the first thing that pops in a lot of your mind when you work on this is, where's the Indigenous voice in this? Where's the Indigenous footprint? So we didn't want, or we were heavily advocating, as the state plans this strategy, we should be working with tribal nations to talk about what that means for our communities. And so it took us 3 years total, talking with elders and community back in Toyac, back in Ignacio, talking about, can we come up with an idea around this? And a lot of the reason we were started there was because there already was information that the tribes were working on. In my community down in Toyac, we're heavily impacted by a several-year drought. Our water access, the Utes had water rights in 1987. My father was the chairman at the time that signed that and created McPhee Reservoir. And we went from 100% water allocation all the way through the 90s to last year 10%. 10%, 100% of water down to 10%. And now we're following fields. I'm not sure if our enterprise around farm and ranch is going to be able to survive. That's a real issue, economic impact that the tribe is dealing with. They're going to have to figure out how to mitigate those issues there. But it's not just there. It's southern you. If you're driving from Pagosa to Durango, which You crisscross over the Southern Ute Indian Reservation over a dozen times. You may not know it because Southern Ute's a checkerboard Indian reservation. But you're gonna pass over a wildlife pass. Now, if you're going up in, to Kremling or in northern Colorado, you'll see a lot of wildlife passes. That's the first wildlife pass that we have in southwestern Colorado, in all of southern Colorado, in the whole state. And it was a collaboration between the tribe and the Colorado Department of Parks and Wildlife and Department of Natural Resources. We were able to look at their data on actually tracking bears, which is something really important to us as Nuchu people, but other animals to be able to safely crisscross that area. So we knew that when we talk about climate resiliency, our tribes were already doing work. In fact, my tribe at Ute Mountain created the first climate resiliency plan the tribe has ever had about 5 years ago. If you would have told me that we were gonna do that 10 years ago, I would have laughed in your face. I was saying, there's no way. Because we were so focused on other revenue generating streams, climate wasn't gonna be on our radar, but in fact, it ended up needing to be. So it took us a couple years to create this framework. And what we wanted to do was we wanted to talk with tribes about what does conservation mean, what does outdoor recreation mean, and what does climate resiliency planning mean. So we came up with this purpose. And these slides that I tell you that you're gonna see, I'm not gonna talk about each one. I have a love-hate relationship with PowerPoint. So you all can read, you can take what you want out of that. We can talk about it after during the Q&A. But what I really wanna focus on are a couple of these things. This document is 80 pages. Now, are you gonna go through 80 pages? I hope so, great. But if not, then what I wanna flag are some things that I really wanna bring your attention to. And then the other component of that is this needs to get bigger. If there's one thing that you take from this presentation today, please, with your tribal nation, I would encourage you to have them get involved with this. I want to see the Northern Arapaho example on this. I want to see the Northern Cheyenne example on this. I want to see the Southern Cheyenne and Arapaho. I want to see the Lakota, Nakota. I want to see those examples a part of this. The Dene example a part of this. Like this is intended to get bigger. It's not going to stop at 80 pages. And it's definitely, as we start bringing more of these examples, the city of Boulder, we have an agreement with 16 tribes. Colorado Springs, over a dozen tribes. Fort Collins is working on a program with the same 20 plus tribes. These are historic tribes that have always called that area home. We know that. We want them to be a part of this conversation. So that's one big thing that I want to make sure that you take away from this. So we set out to create this framework. The intended audiences are here, obviously state agencies, departments. The state, as I mentioned, is broken up into different regions. And so we wanted to encourage those regions who've never worked with a tribe, who don't live next to a tribal nation like Montezuma County or Archuleta County, or even the work that maybe Denver's done or Boulder or El Paso. Those counties, other counties may not have ever talked about it. Right now we're having a conversation with the Nature Conservancy who's in the room with the community of Steamboat. Steamboat is dying for their indigenous, to have some type of indigenous presence in their community. And they have huge impacts with the Yampa River. The communities of Summit County. Summit County has the first indigenous representative on their school board. There's the first indigenous mayor in Denver who's Dene. Our first and only, our city archaeologist is in Colorado Springs. Anna Cordova is doing huge things at Garden of the Gods. How can we elevate what our people are doing and with this work that's going on? Thanks. And so when you look through the document, you'll see all this. When we go out to communities, this training is normally a 3 to 4 hour training. So for the next 3 hours, I hope you all have water, coffee, got some eggs, some potatoes still out there. I'm just kidding.
I have my time check.
I know, she's over here. I'm scared. And I have my own clock over here, but I'm only gonna touch on a few of these. Next slide. So who was the tribal engagement team? We actually pulled some folks together. We partnered with Jemera Gifford, who was Colorado State University, doing a lot of indigenous herself, doing a lot of work within her own PhD program. Regina Lopez White Skunk is somebody who's sat on various communities, committee areas for the Ute Mountain Tribe in the Southwest. And then we also were talking with elders and folks in the community. Go to the next one. Here are the partners, okay. And here's the methodology, you get it, it's the relationship building, the coordination stuff. That's all important. What I'm really excited about is this. When we were talking about how to talk with Western mindseted, science-based folks and indigenous, we always talk about the weaving, right? The weaving of that interconnectedness process. I think part of what is helpful to us as intertribal, because if you want to talk about 50 tribes, if you want to talk one tribe, two tribes, several tribes, one thing around the medicine wheel is so important, I think it's so helpful, is how can we talk about collaboration? And what I love about this is that there's actually, this over here, traditional knowledge one, is actually buttes that I'm used to growing up, because I grew up 10 miles from the Utah border, so. But each one of these are important. We talk about long-term relationships with communities. Now, remember, the audience that I'm talking to is usually not you all. It's to county officials, it's to county, state park or local parks, wildlife managers, county commissioners, local governments. So we're expressing why, in talking with tribes and talking with our two tribes, this came out standing bright and shining, was this is what they wanted to see when we were reaching out. Okay, next one. So we go through each color. We talk about why it's important to have that mutual respect, why it's important to honor tribal expertise in the outdoors, that we do not talk about tribes as stakeholders. Tribal nations are not stakeholders. We never were. We all know that. Many people out there don't know that. So we automatically get lumped in together when the new questionnaire, when the new survey is released, because that's the best practice, right? Nobody really knows any different. So we're here to, go to the next one. We can go, obviously this is big. Ever since, what's the book? Braiding Sweetgrass dropped, it's like, poof. I get more questions about traditional knowledge. I've received emails from people saying, can you email me your traditional knowledge? Folks, there's something wrong out here. Like, we gotta educate people. And you're laughing because you probably got the same email. Yeah. We can't, this is the number one, Walt and I are welcoming a group coming into Denver next week, the World Ecological Society of Restoration Conference, bringing 1,500 people from around the world here to Denver. And I guarantee you, how many times are we going to talk about traditional knowledge? That's going to be on my bingo card for sure. But the point is we wanted to make sure, what does traditional knowledge mean? And why is it so important that when you're talking to an elder, you don't always are writing things down. Sometimes it's just listening. Sometimes it's just getting out on the land, hearing the story. And it's for you. It's not for you to share. It's not for you to publish. It's not for us to put in some quote by so-and-so. So that's what we wanted to start talking about and using the examples. Next slide. And then the last was resource sharing. How does resource sharing transition into long-term agreements? Who's heard of data sharing? Tribal data sovereignty. Data sovereignty is one of the biggest movements right now in Indian country and tribal communities, because we know, I'll use my tribe for example. Actually, I'll use an example why this is a big issue, and I'm glad that we're trying to bring more recognition in Colorado to the importance of data sharing. When I was at the state, and I was director of Indian Affairs, there was a county, I won't name the county, it won't be hard to figure out, but that was using the data of our tribal youth on the local Indian reservation, our social determinants of health, and the numbers that we know as Native people that are off the charts. Cardiovascular disease, heart disease, alcoholism, suicide, all this other stuff. And they were using the tribe's data from a specific youth category to receive funding for programs that never intended to reach the tribal community. Now, when the tribe releases that information, in my tribe at that time, they thought that would ensure programs would continue. That did not happen. And unfortunately, that happens. You probably have examples of this. So why is data sovereignty so important? The tribe should be aware and creating agreements on who they're sharing data with to ensure that that information is not widely shared outside of them, and they have agreed to that. So now anymore, when we're working with Southern Ute, when working with Ute Mountain, working with any tribal nation, we should be working on tribal terms. We should be working with them on what they want to see shared. And when we're talking with communities, that should be important too. And so that's why I just want to make sure that that's where the data sovereignty and data sharing component comes into all this. I think this one, we have information around people who don't know, especially on the Western Slope areas that people don't know what is Ute history. I know that you heard a great presentation by Cassandra and Don on the first day. And this gives folks an idea who never even knew where was traditional Ute territory. One thing that has come up, even in this conversation and with Colorado Parks and Wildlife over the last couple of years, is the Bruno Agreement. This is so important to us as Ute people because it is the first, longest, and still only in existence in the United States, the first off-reservation hunting and fishing agreement that allows for a tribal nation, Ute Mountain and Southern Ute, to hunt and fish off our designated reservations. This was signed in 1874, and it's over 3 million acres in southwestern Colorado. I mean, if you're not from down there, you probably would never even know about it. But I will tell you one thing. In 2012, we were looking at updating this agreement, and the State Parks and Wildlife Commission at the time, there was one person there that voted no. They said they voted no, they didn't want to expand it, they didn't want to update the agreement, because the Utes were going to kill all the animals and they were going to take all the fish. That's what he was worried about. Folks, that was 2012. We're not that far. We're not that far away. Now, I'm glad that others didn't see it that way. The agreement got passed. And this is still on record. Now, has it attempted to be challenged? Absolutely. But people don't know about the Bruno Agreement. And if you're working in wildlife, if you're working in parks and open space, especially if you're in southwestern Colorado, yes, this is important. These are the type of examples and the work that Rick has done and others that I personally would love to see examples of as we start looking at other tribes. Because I don't know the Navajo equivalent of what that is. I don't know the Cheyenne, the Arapaho, the Kiowa, the Comanche, and the 19 Pueblos. But I think that's the start of the conversation here. And of course, it talks about where we are now. Historic tribes of Colorado. I know this has come up numerous times. I often say that when I was a part of this team in 2007, Karen Wild in the back was a part of this, establishing back in the day. Whatever number, this number was meant to expand. And I know there's a number of 48 that's over 50 now. This number should grow. The better we work on establishing relationships with tribal nations, this should grow. Because tribes that weren't able to involved in that process in 2007 may be able to be involved now. We can keep going. Phil's visits, what am I doing on time? I got 17 minutes, okay. I think one thing to also ideas that we're talking to community about is some of these Phil's visits. Some people have never been to the Ute Mountain Tribal Park. Here we're standing on the top of that wildlife pass between Pagosa and Durango. We talk about the boarding school impact. We know it's a very important day come next Tuesday. It's Orange Shirt Day. And it's important because even though this is talking about climate resiliency planning, we need to talk about historical trauma. It's already been mentioned in the short time I've been here this morning, and what is one of the biggest impacts to our people has absolutely been that time frame. So talking about the old fort at Hesperus, which started as an Indian boarding school, which now is Fort Lewis College, which graduates more Native American students in STEM-related degrees than any other higher education institution in the country. And it's 3,000 students, 170 students on average every incoming class. So a lot of people ask us, well, what are the priorities for the tribes? Like, let's just take the Ute Mountain Southern Ute. What do they want to see when we're talking about the outdoors? So of course we met with them, we met with a lot of their community and their elders and their leaders. They gave us this information. You can keep going here. It talks about their priorities in the outdoors, but I want to bring your attention to the last one, which is the biggest, this one right here. Actually, the next slide. Strategies, barriers, and pitfalls to collaboration. Now, you may have heard in talking with communities that you're applying for a grant, or maybe a local Parks and Rec office from the county has at least told me, they've said, we've tried calling so-and-so a dozen times and never get a call back. I heard you, I'm not gonna send snail mail, I'm gonna send email, I'm gonna keep sending email, I'm gonna keep calling. But what happens when I don't ever get a response? I have to move forward. I have a deadline. I know I don't want to apply that difficult timeline on a tribal nation, on a sovereign entity, I get that. But what happens when I hear that response? Is there a way that somebody can at least let me know, hey, we are interested. We just have one TIPO officer that's busy every hour of the day for the next 3 months out, and in his or her inbox is 10,000 unread emails from every federal, state, and local entity, an NGO, and so-and-so, and so-and-so's cousin, and everything else. And every one of those projects are important. And every one of those projects might have funding tied to it. How do I continue to move forward? That's a real question. That's a legitimate question. Even in my own community, sometimes I have to call my cousins and be like, hey, get to the office, or pick up that email, or answer that phone, or I'm giving your cell phone to so-and-so, and then they freak out, and then they finally answer the phone. But my point is like, these are questions for communities that are saying, uncoordinated numerous requests for a tribal engagement, lack of agency or organizational directive, and all this other information. I think the next one. Like I mentioned, treating tribal nations as stakeholders and not stakeholders. Treating relationships transactional instead of reciprocal. Impatience, gosh, the number one thing. Quick to listen, slow to speak. We understand that. But so often, so many times, and I get this, that at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is we're giving people that education, that class that they didn't take in college, which was, ethnic diversity, Indigenous 101. A lot of times that wasn't out there, and I don't blame them for that, because now they're in this position where they are wanting to work with a tribal nation. What does that mean? And so that's really what we're talking about here. And then you can go through. And then at the very end, what we do with these groups is we break them out into 3 groups. One of these slides is like a Mentimeter slide, where it's a QR code. And we usually break people up into these 3 groups, and we give them 3 or 4 questions to answer on the Mentimeter. And it's something that you click on your phone, and anyways. And it also circles around, do you have an idea on working with a tribe? Does your organization have a program that you're trying to outreach for? Maybe I got an email yesterday about Longmont's wanting to starting an Indigenous literacy festival. There's nonstop questions around Indigenous film festivals. How can we get more of them? How can we encourage to bring up, films, Sundance that's coming to Boulder? How can Sundance lean in more to Indigenous community film, artists, media, which is amazing right now. We're living in an amazing opportunity. So this is just to get folks to start talking. All this to say that at the end of the day, there's funding. And that's what perks their ears. There's funding for local government to partner with a tribal nation that might live several hours away, states away, to get them involved in their project. And that's really what we're encouraging to do. And that's what we want to share with you all. Because I used to also sit on the Tall Bull Council many moons ago, but that is a prime example. Gosh, that was light years ahead of what it was when it was done in the 90s. And the work that folks have done in this community to ensure that Tall Bull Memorial Grounds continue, that's huge. What Boulder's doing is awesome. Fire mitigation work is going on right now. We're started a beaver restoration effort statewide. All these points are things for Indigenous voices, your voices, to be involved in, and so that's what I just wanted to bring attention to. I've taken all of the time. I'm sorry, Stacey. I apologize. I should have given this to you a long time ago.
That is all right. That is all right. No, I wasn't going to interrupt at all. That being said, with Colorado Parks and Wildlife being the implementing agency with this particular strategy, you're going to see a lot more efforts on our part to ensure that we're creating funding streams not only for community, but ensure that we're budgeting this work internally too, which is an important piece. It doesn't happen, it's never easy in government to do that, especially when we're hearing about budget cuts everywhere. But that's an important piece so that we can make sure that we're doing frequent community listening sessions, ensure that we're getting competent staff to work with community, hire appropriate consultants to do some of the larger work that the agency isn't able to do the lift on, to be quite honest. And it's not only just for CPW to implement, it's for all of the department to implement. So just as we're saying that this is a resource for NGOs, other public partners, this is something that goes into all 8 of our divisions that fall under the Department of Natural Resources. CPW is one of those, but there's also the Colorado State Forest Service, the Energy Carbon Management Commission, Colorado Water Conservation Board, several others. So we're talking about divisions that hit on a lot of our important natural and cultural resource relatives. So with that, maybe I'm noticing we have 8 minutes left, maybe, and I wanted to be able to hear from all of you. This is the first year of rolling this out. Oh, we do?
Yeah, we have 15 minutes.
Okay. Well, good. Well, we'll use all 15 minutes then.
Plus, Valerie's not in here, so we can just keep it going.
I'm just going to start going around with the microphone. Thank you.
I know that I live here in Colorado and it's a beautiful state. So even when I do my license plates, when I renew my license plates, my license tag, I usually buy going to the national parks. They have this, they ask you if you want to pay for your national parks to go visit the national parks. It's extra on your license plates, your tax when you renew it. And, if you're a big supporter of Mother Nature, I think it's good, because you can go visit the national parks.
State parks.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you for that comment. I'm going to start over here, and Rick can just keep on going down. Give me a second.
I have 3 questions and associated comments. One of the biggest concerns that I carry on a day-to-day basis is that I know there are 200 sacred sites in Colorado that are unprotected, and there is no current plan to preserve those sites. In addition to that, I haven't seen the results of the survey about the state parks, and I want to see that because I don't know if anybody else put in the survey. I put in the survey because I want to be able to access those sacred sites to be able to pray. I'm not going to go there to recreate. I'm going to go there to pray. That's the first one. The second one, and this is equally important for everyone in this room, we need a significant plan to restore buffalo to Colorado, across the state. To give you an idea about what the impact was for our people, today that would have a value of $48 billion. That loss is part of the reason why we continue to have trouble and problems in our communities, because we don't have the necessary resources. The next one is there are certain nations that have treaty rights or aboriginal rights to hunt and fish that have been unabrogated, meaning that nobody's ever taken them away. People will say, well, because the 51 treaty wasn't affirmed, it was ratified, but it wasn't affirmed, they don't have those rights. But they do have those rights because they had aboriginal rights prior to that. And I think that's a critical piece that we have to consider. We have to get those nations that have legal rights to hunt and fish here, we have to accommodate that. And, you know, I think that, you know, you talked about the Bruno agreement, and, you know, I know the story about Donald White's father, and that consent decree is critical. That's the justification that we would use if we have to sue, that in the Riviera case, because we can prove that we have those rights. So, thank you.
Thank you for that, Rick. And just real quick, I did want to respond quickly, if you don't mind sitting there. I do want to know that, Rick provided some incredible testimony this past legislative session about sacred sites, and also reached out about this piece too. And it's something that I've flagged and we're having conversations about with not only History Colorado, but the State Attorney General's office too. One of these tricky things with federal Indian law and policy is not all of it is necessarily at the state level too. And that's something that we all need to evaluate so that we can make sure that we're appropriately protecting those sacred sites. So that's something that we'll be talking about more too. That's another big and important conversation here to have, so I appreciate you bringing it up today. And for those of you that may not be familiar, the People of the Sacred Land, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission put out an incredible 3-report series this last year that talks about a lot of these pieces that Rick just mentioned today, in terms of, I see he's got one of them here, the legal and political history of Colorado tribes. But you can find these all online, and we have circulated this to also, all of our state staff, so that folks know about that too. But they're really important to read and take some time with. So.
Hey, Stacey,
Yeah.
can I answer one other thing? And we'll go. One other thing that Rick brought up, which is hugely important, and I wish we were able to send more of this. And I'm going to put Isabella Rufino. Isabella, can you wave your hand right there? Isabella is a year and a half, 2 years. Wow, time's flying. She's the tribal liaison for the Nature Conservancy in Colorado. In the San Luis Valley, it's the largest buffalo herd in the state of Colorado, over 1,000 head. And we have actively been bringing tribal nations onto that landscape to not only talk about how tribal nations manage their own buffalo herds, but how we can learn from each other. This has been ongoing. Please talk with Isabella about their work, because it's the same examples being kind of also shared in other locations, and definitely talking with Scott around their process. But it's not just restoring buffalo to the land, to your point, Rick. It's also exchanging buffalo to tribal nations like mine that have depleted, and how do we rebuild that back? So many of our young people don't know traditionally how we as Nuchu people approach buffalo. That's still something I'm learning. And we need a space to bring elders and others to help teach that into the next ongoing process in doing that. If that means robes, if that means skulls, if that means inviting people out for cultural hunts, whatever that means, that's a huge component of what we want to do there. And we think that there are existing programs that can help with what we're doing, but then also show us how they're doing their work. And so please talk to Isabella, because that's actively what's going on. She was probably just out with the herd last week, I think. And so I just wanted to make that point.
And thank you to City of Denver for their bison restoration work too. Yes. We appreciate that. Jason Allen has also been doing a great job as well. I'm sorry?
Where's the herd at? I was trying to.
Oh, his?
It's a Potter Ranch in the San Luis Valley, which is right outside of Alamosa. And if you want to visit the ranch, talk to Isabella. She can get you a tour and get you out and to check out. It's right at the base of the Sand Dunes National Monument. So the picture that you're always seeing with buffalo and then the sand dunes, that's the herd.
Yeah.
The plan is to restore it to 25,000 head of buffalo.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just so you know that TNC is one of our partners too. This is what we're talking about when we're talking about partnering across the landscape together.
Thank you for getting to me. But this question, probably you guys could answer together again. There's actually 3 questions and they're kind of separate. The first one is, does Parks and Wildlife have a partnership with any of the 2 Ute tribal entities in the state that calls for their inclusion in the restoration of endangered fish species of the Colorado River Basin? I've partnered through our American Indian Academy, and we had a partnership with Trout Unlimited, and our hands were tied in helping with that restoration. But we found that the Ute tribes were capable, or they were allowed to be included, but no one included them. So, and there was no funding or anything from Fish and Wildlife going towards helping that traditional knowledge of, observation of species that is, 10,000 years old that Native people have. So that was one of my questions. The second question I have is, what are your plans for inclusion of like the Front Range community of Native people that numbers from 100,000 to 120,000 people? Do you have a plan for our continued inclusion of these projects that you have? And the third one is, we had a partnership with state parks to bring our youth into certain spaces like Vega Reservoir, Navajo Reservoir, some of the state parks, where they would do research on pre-park native inhabitants of that area for a spot in the park that would include those tribal people who inhabited them spaces before the park was included. So has there been anything to reinvigorate that program? Because now it's been over 2 years that we don't have that programming, just because we lost the American Indian Academy. We haven't had any engagement, and I work with youth every day. Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, I'm going to be at the Medicine Wheel at Daniels Park taking a tour with Mr. Louis Talbot. There he is. He's going to be leading the youth and talking about our traditional ways or traditional knowledge, which include the buffalo, And so these are some things that I am working with and on right now, and I'm excited for some of the things of $50 million, but I don't get to see Ernest very much. He's a busy man. I used to sit on multiple things with him, but anymore it's like, where's Ernest? I haven't seen him. Did he move?
I'm up in the mountains.
Yeah. So those are my questions.
So on the Colorado River piece, I'm gonna have to follow up on that, Sid. We have a strong relationship between Colorado Water Conservation Board and working very closely with not only the 2 tribes, but additional tribes that have historical ties to the Colorado Basin. The upper basin states also have entered into an MOU with those particular tribes too, to ensure inclusion and that they're at the table for the negotiations that are occurring right now on the Colorado River and the post-2026 guidelines. So I'm going to follow up on that and get back to you on that, just so that I can figure out from CPW's angle. With the Bruneau agreement, certainly with those MOUs that Ernest had mentioned, those memorandums of understanding that were entered into in 2008 with Southern Ute, 2013 with Ute Mountain Ute, they basically just amplify, kind of what the treaty language meant. And sort of that ensuring that, it's not just that one line in there that kind of says things. from back then, but really extends this piece on what is hunting, fishing, gathering rights, what is co-management, these other pieces. So that those MOUs are really important. So I'll double check that to see if it goes beyond those MOUs too. It should. And then on the second piece,
The plans for front range engagement.
plans for front range. Thank you for that prompt there. And I mean, Ernest, feel free to jump in at any point too. The next piece that we have, because now I'm hogging the microphone.
No.
Coming up, we were hoping to get it together this fall, but I think it's going to be in the springtime, are a series of community listening sessions. And this is really focused on state parks. We're kind of trying to take one thing at a time there for obvious reasons as we're growing this relationship. This relationship hasn't been built in the past. You know, it might have been on, you know, one-off projects here and there with CPW, but it's meant to be a comprehensive relationship building to stand for generations and time. So we're going to start those listening sessions. They're, you know, going to be held throughout Colorado. I don't know the number yet or the locations that we're going to do them, but we're going to continue to provide information. And I think it kind of connects back to what Rick said about the survey. That survey that was conducted started in December of last year and ran through April of this year. And that was to help inform those community listening sessions to come. So we were planning on utilizing that survey and putting out a comprehensive report after the listening sessions, but we may have to reevaluate that because I absolutely agree with Rick's sort of comment on that piece too. And then the last piece. Oh yes, so with the American Indian Academy of Denver, we didn't want that to drop either. So when I came in just 2 years ago, that was a priority issue that we started addressing. We've been working with Terry Bissonette on an outdoor education program piece that we can build out more. So that is not done, it's still in the works, but that is something that we're wanting to continue to ensure that we're getting the Native youth here in Denver involved in our parks, getting them out there. If there are further events that anybody in here would like to do in our state parks, please, please, please contact me so we can make sure that that's happening again. We don't want this to be a barrier, we don't want cost to be a barrier, so please talk to me about that.
I think we're getting the hook.
We're getting the
But if you,
Oh,
so if you want to do your
okay.
closing
Need to wrap
comment.
it up.
Can we do just one more?
One
Is
more's
that
fine.
okay? Thank you.
A quick thing to go ahead and add to your presentation here. One part of it is it's only been 31 years since we had the government relationship established. You got to remember some of the challenges are that the tribal nations usually change their council every 2 years. So a lot of it really doesn't go with knowing that you want to follow through with everything else, because it's kind of a relearning thing for a person that you're going to be in touch with, and that was a big challenge for me. One other thing I would really like to add is our Native people, our elders, spoke about prophecies. They have metaphors in their stories, and I'm going to use the big snake, the big black snake that came about if you listen to the elders, and they have myths. The big black snake to me at my age was a big monster. Well, what they were talking about was a pipeline in North Dakota. We as Native American people, as elders, look beyond Uchimaka nature as living beings, whereas in today's world, it's looked upon as objects. So my input to this is, if you're going to do a lot of studies, and I like what you did here with the medicine wheel, is to get in contact with the elders, because they have a broader sense. They have a broader sense of what they experience and what they witness in our lives, and what we've seen, what our challenges are, and to know how far we come. But we still have challenges, and this is the thing that I could probably say is, we have the state of Colorado. These people finally opened that box up for us. We were all put in a box, and that's my whole thing, is to say, all Native people were put in a box, and now they're finally opening the top, so some of us are crawling out. It's a long journey for us. Boarding school has done a lot of damage. So when you want to think about trust issues, If you want to think about why Native Americans don't get included, remember we're still dealing with trauma. So that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you, and just to wrap up, we appreciate your time today and for taking, the time today to also share with us your experiences and some of the things that you're hoping to see with this particular strategy. I'm a contact. Also, please know, I'm a person of one in this entire department, but I'm a contact and I rely on, our community leaders, our elders, the entire community to help out too. So I hope that we can, work on building and expanding that relationship.
And I just want to again say doyak, which means thank you for the opportunity. I got 15 more minutes. Just kidding. We're on Indian time, I thought. Well, what kind of tribal gathering is this? Time limits. I'm just kidding. The last thing I'll say, totally unrelated to anything you just heard, but want to thank Colorado State University Spur Campus. This space is available for our Indigenous people. So please contact them when you want to host your events in communities. They are very much interested in wanting to partner and support different events going on. Go check out this space. Now, right across the street, if you've been outside, that's the new National Western Center. We're all on the National Western Center complex. Now, I don't know if you all heard last year or earlier, like 6 months ago, it was announced that the Gathering of Nations in Albuquerque was going to be ending after next year. Yeah. Denver's always had the second largest powwow in the nation, right? At the Denver Coliseum. I want us to have the first one now across the street. So we're talking with those folks. Sid, I want to talk with you and others. Across the street is also space for you to host meetings, for you to host gatherings, events. It's massive. If we can set up a time to give you a tour once it's all done, we want to do that. But I want to ensure that this space, yes, these are new buildings and stuff, but there's been a lot of work done here. And one of the component that needs to be a part of that is the Indigenous voice. So please, let me know. I will get you in contact with folks that you can host your event or in things like that. We want to make sure that you feel welcome in this community and that you're a part of it. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you all today. Great to see a lot of familiar faces, especially Walt. Man, I thought this place was going to blow up when he walked in this room. But looking forward to the rest of the day.
Thanks for being here.